Hello there, and welcome back into the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I am your host, Sam Hind, and I am so excited today to introduce you to a very special guest. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most powerful strategies you can employ in your business that costs you no money, very little time, and will get you better results than almost any activity you could possibly do, and that is to get better testimonials. Today, we're going to be speaking with John Hubbard. John Hubbard is a business consultant, mentor, and strategic advisor specializing in customer-led marketing. And I want to really emphasize that word, customer-led. John's going to be sharing today in this interview some of his amazing experience in the space of getting testimonials and some incredible stories of businesses that have used this really powerful strategy and seen incredible turnaround. John is the creator of the Get Better Testimonials course, and he's worked with many brands and companies all around the world that you'll know very, very well to help them to strategically improve their marketing plans by doing exactly that. From Nike to Ford, Honda, Oakley, BHP, and dozens more. He has got over 20 years of experience in marketing strategy and, of course, in getting better testimonials. So, with no further ado, grab pen and paper because he's going to share some tips and tricks and strategies that you can implement right now to get better testimonials. Now, I also want to let our accelerator members know, if you love this interview that you're about to hear, we have got John coming in on the 29th of March to be doing a live deep dive training with you and to actually help you create some scripts and processes in your business to get better testimonials. So if you are not an accelerator member and you want to know more about becoming one, we're going to put some links in the show notes so that you can find out a little bit more. But with no further ado, get your pen and paper ready, grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee, sit down and enjoy this amazing interview with John Hubbard. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back in to the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I am so excited to be joined today by John Hubbard. Thank you so much for coming in and having a chat with us on the podcast, John.
Thank you, Sam. I'm very grateful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure. And look, we've had a chance to get to know each other a little bit, have a bit of a chit chat. I know this is going to be a really powerful conversation for our listeners. Have already got so much just from chatting with you over just a couple of calls. So I can't wait for some of this amazing knowledge and wisdom you're going to share. But just before we get into the nuts and bolts of the conversation, can you tell us a little bit about John?
Yeah, sure. So once again, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really happy to be here. I'm a marketing journeyman. I've been in video marketing for 20 years. I started back in 2002 in working for I was in film school, and a production company or an agency came along and plucked me out of film school to be a runner. And I went off to a car show and was filming Vox Pop. So testimonials was literally my very first job. And I can remember because I questioned the producer about it. I brought my camera along because I was dead keen to film the cars. I thought that's what we were going there to do. And I'd watched Top Gear, and I had all these kind of Dutch tilts that I could do with the camera and so on. And I said to him, why are we filming the people and not the cars? And he said to me, because social proof trumps features and benefits. And I didn't even know what social proof was at that stage. I had to go home and Google it. But it's kind of ironic that from there I ended up specializing in social proof. But anyway, I did 10 years of marketing agency land, and then started my own coaching business in 2013, and then got bought out of that business and went on to consulting after that.
Yeah. So you've already mentioned testimonials. I'm excited to talk about this today. You've had a really interesting and exciting career up until this point. What has got you to this place where you're so passionate about testimonials and helping people in this space?
Yeah, it was the experience of starting a business ourselves in 2013. So I started a business with another lady, Jane Slack-Smith, who is an author and property investment coach. She had a very low risk form of property investment that I thought was really attractive, and she's very ethical. So I teamed up with her, and I was kind of bringing the marketing and production side. She was bringing the expertise in the property space, and did an online course. Spent 9 months filming it in a studio with teleprompters and all of this kind of stuff. Complete overkill. Came to launch it. Signed up with got a marketing agency, spent an absolute bomb with them. I think about $19,000, and had everything from websites and, PDF brochures and logos and all this kind of stuff. And then launched the course, and we got 5 sales, and one of which refunded. I think it was 6 sales and one of which refunded. So
yeah. I've been there, by the way. I hear you.
Yes, it absolutely broke our hearts. 9 months of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
And so we had to go back to the drawing board. And so the second time round, I said, I'm going to basically do what I know. And one of the things that I learned in that 10 years in agency world is a lot of big brands invest heavily in user-generated content, or what I would now call customer-led marketing. So, for instance, when we were launching a car, it'd be for Ford, it'd be about the journey, even of the engineers in building the car, or the interior designer or something like that. If we're doing a job for Nike, it would be going out to a gym and someone talking about how it feels to work out in the clothes. Or there was even probably one of the biggest productions I ever did was for BHP Billiton in the middle of the mining boom. And they literally flew us around the world to do case studies of people that work for them in order to get new recruits, because they were desperate for recruits. They couldn't fill the roles. So ultimately they turned to case studies because the straight out promotion wasn't working. So I'd seen them invest so heavily in that, and I thought, well, that works. I know that works. Let me try that for this course. And the course was $2,500. So it wasn't cheap. So we put 20 people through as free beta testers. And I can remember someone actually saying to me, well, there's 20 sales you'll never get. And so we're a little bit, do we really want to give away 20 of these? But we put 20 people through. We did that on the condition that if we were able to deliver the value that we said we would, that they would be willing to give us a testimonial. So from day one, what we did is a before testimonial, which was just over Skype at the time, so the quality wasn't great. So I got the before picture, what they were hoping to achieve and what their desire was, what their challenges they faced at the moment. And then at the end of the course, we did the bookend. So we got the after picture and found out, the what they got out of the course, and then stitched that together into a video. And we went back out and launched, and I think we got 30 sales on the second time around, but that was enough to really get us going. And then from then on, that became a real theme of the way we marketed that course. In fact, it was 3 years before I actually hired a copywriter, because we just really went with using customer stories as the spearhead of our marketing, really.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And, I love how you by default use that in place of expensive marketing. And we'll get there in a little moment. But just really quickly, I want to ask, you've mentioned a lot of big companies and organizations that you've worked with and the importance of testimonials. Are they just as important for solopreneurs, in our case, direct sellers? Because obviously most of our listeners, 99% of our listeners, have got their own, party plan, network marketing, or MLM business. How do testimonials relate to them?
Yeah, I think they are important. I think they're important in any sales transaction, that you can show proof, you can put up proof that what you've got actually delivers results for people like them. So it just really alleviates a lot of the hard sell, because you can just show instead of tell, which makes it so much easier. But particularly online now, what we've seen over the last 5 years is a real decline in consumer trust. And it started, we saw the worm turn down around 2017. There was a famous report by a group called Elderman. It's a trust barometer, and it basically, the barometer dropped by about 10%. I think it was 12% in 1 year, from 45% to 33%. And then that turned out to be the tip of the iceberg. It just kept on going down. You had things like millennials, 84% of millennials don't trust traditional advertising. And then later on, there was a study by Census-Wide that said 30% of consumers have little trust in brand information they discover on Facebook, which was another 10% drop from the previous year. And what we've continued to see that decline. And so if you felt like it's getting harder to sell online, you're not imagining it. It actually is getting harder to sell online.
Yep.
And it's because most of us are run into charlatans online. Most of us have seen, programs or products that overpromise and underdeliver, and we're all just a bit used to it now. So it's, once bitten, twice shy. But the good news is, and the flip side, and something that hasn't changed, is another recent study said that 9 out of 10 customers trust what a customer has to say about a company more than what the company says about itself. So 9 out of 10 customers trust what a customer has to say about a company more than what the company says about itself.
Yeah.
So that is really a saving grace. And it's not something that's really complicated for us to do. We don't have to hire expensive copywriters. We just need to put our results front and center of our marketing efforts. So a little bit of elbow grease in order to do that. And you've got to be bold enough to ask for the testimonial in the first place, but it is quite an easy strategy to execute.
Yeah. And, for our listeners, we are going to talk about that in a moment because you're quite generously going to speak on that. We've sort of had a bit of a chat about this, and you've got some amazing tools and skills and tips and tricks, et cetera, that you can provide. But what I did want to, I guess, reiterate there is that third-party validation, which is what we often talk about inside of our courses, and the importance on social media of doing that, because as you just said, and it's so true, think about, your own buying behaviors. If you're going to go to a company or a business for the very first time, what's the most likely thing you are going to do before you make a buying decision? And for most of you, I know for me included, is to ask someone that's tried that business or that company or that organization or that product before and and sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with the price. It's not about, it's more expensive than what I would normally use. To be perfectly honest, I think about time and experience more than anything. Our time is so incredibly precious, and people don't want to waste their time anymore on going with the wrong decision if they could have simply spoken to a friend or somebody that they trust and got some feedback on that. Now, interestingly, getting a testimonial, I feel like people don't do this anywhere near enough. And I know that that's the truth, because that's why you have a business helping people in this space, John. But it is such a powerful tool. And, I think people are more willing to pay money to advertise on social media or pay money for marketing than what they are to front up and ask for a testimonial. But the testimonial in itself is more powerful than any form of marketing you could do. We used to, back in my corporate days, I used to work in a marketing role where my job was to help people to get word of mouth marketing. And, the thing is that it's something that you can't really pay for, but it's a skill. And when you get into the habit of asking for it, it is just so powerful. But I thought you might have a story or two though, John. I'm sure you've got like a swag full of them. I'd love to ask, this is really just me being a little bit selfish here for a moment as a marketer at heart. I see a lot of people, a lot of companies spending big dollars, lots of money on advertising campaigns. They've got big marketing budgets. But for majority of them, gathering testimonials and having a strategy around that, and not just the strategy around gathering them, but how they're going to utilize them, isn't a core part of their marketing strategy. But I know that you are sort of entering the scene here. You've probably seen some instances and have a couple of stories you might be able to share with us today, because I love a good case study, and that's what you're all about.
Yes.
Of a company or an organization or even a solopreneur who has done exactly that, but then switched it into testimonials and has seen the difference of that.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think you may have talked to one of them yesterday or today, a mutual friend of ours who works with international speakers, comes to mind immediately. She's hugely respected in the industry. People absolutely love her. brought over some of the biggest speakers. So she works with speakers who sell from stage. She's brought over some of the biggest names in NLP and all of these types of industries to speak at these training events. Hardly any testimonials, and just had a real mental barrier to asking, because it just felt like she was imposing on the client. It just didn't feel like the relationship she had with the client. And I introduced her to just a couple of simple techniques to put in those testimonial requests, which I'm happy to share with your audience, Sam. And immediately I got a message saying, I've had 3 testimonials come in 3 people say yes in one day. So just by getting
she
over
did tell
that,
me about this, actually. To be fair, she actually said to me, she used to pay people to, we were having a laugh because, my team, I'm not going to lie, my team, it's their job to, gather those testimonials. And she was doing exactly the same thing. She goes, oh, you won't do that anymore once you've spoken to John. She said, I do it all now myself. And she said, and it's amazing, the testimonials I get back from people.
Yeah, it is. And the quality's so much better too, just knowing the starting with the end in mind, and just knowing we only need a couple of sound bites to really resonate with the prospects. So you don't need to have the big, long, 60 minutes interview. It's just getting those little sound bites, and then you're good to go. So that's an example. But she was pretty typical of a business that gets results, very accomplished business person, of someone who gets results but just doesn't showcase those results. And that tends to be the story of the majority of people that I speak with. And it really comes down to just, I guess, the hassle factor and being worried about imposing on the client or damaging the relationship with the client.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is a fear. I know, even myself over the years, it's always that, is it, will it seem too needy to ask for that? Or, what if they say no? Will it make them uncomfortable? Will they not be a customer anymore if suddenly I switch it up and ask them for a testimonial? But you got to think, someone asked you for that and they valued your opinion that much and you as a customer that much that they wanted to share your story with others. Do you look at that and frown upon it and think less of that person, or does it actually really make you feel valued? And I think, the perception of us, the asker versus the person being asked, is actually really, I know, when I think about it that way, is quite different. I'm assuming that's,
Yes.
What would you say is probably one of the biggest pushbacks you get from people or fear factors around asking for testimonials?
It is that they're imposing. I'll hear things like, they're paying me. Why should they have to do work for me, kind of thing.
Yep.
Or what happens a lot of the time is they ask, and someone says yes, and then there's this kind of awkward silence. A week go by,
Now what?
and they're worried about running into this kind of awkward situation. So you do that once, and you're a little bit hesitant of asking the second time. But it kind of, the fundamental problem behind it is that when you're asking someone for a testimonial, in most cases, you're putting the onus of responsibility on them to come up with what to say. And that's really what the boogeyman behind the whole problem is. So if you imagine I ask you for a testimonial, Sam, for let's say you've done my course, for instance. Now, in your case, you've got a little bit of insight because we know each other a little bit. But for the most part, you don't know who my target audience is. You don't know all the hot buttons that you need that I would be hoping to hit in a piece of marketing material. And so you're going to be thinking, oh, well, what does he want me to say? Gee, I hope I don't say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Oh, how long's this going to take, kind of thing. So it's it's just giving you a whole bunch of homework and a whole bunch of work and potentially some social awkwardness into the bargain. And so it's no wonder that, suddenly we have radio silence and you don't come back to me. So right at the top of the list is just making it really easy for people to say yes. So I've got a bit of a framework that I use to remember that, called the R.E.A.L testimonial request framework, that so when I send a request, I go, okay, we've ticked that box, and we've ticked that box.
Yep.
And we're much more likely to get a yes if the person is in the right, the timing's right for the person to give us the testimonial.
Yeah, awesome. So we're going to get to that in a moment, because I definitely want to get some of those tips off you. Just before we go into the what to do, I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people making when it comes to gathering testimonials?
Yes. The number one mistake is, well, there's a lot, but I think
just not asking.
Putting aside the production value and the rambly long answers and all of that kind of the technical mishaps, it tends to be that it doesn't really say anything to the prospect, the person watching it. So often people will ask people to, interviewee to talk about their product, and then I've had people, getting testimonials on their onboarding process and all of this kind of stuff. And if you think of someone coming into your world, and often we're using, and what we're talking about here is little short testimonials. There's longer kind of case studies and stuff that we'd use in other ways, but for a short little testimonial, typically they're at what we would call the top of the funnel. So where people are coming into your world for the first time. So they're at the very start of the customer experience with you. So at that stage of the customer journey, they don't really know you very well yet. And they're probably looking at you and a few other people at the same time and weighing up which way they want to go. So at that stage, they're not going to give you much time. So it needs to be short, the testimonial. So it can't be banging on about you or all the intricacies of your widget, or it really needs to speak to them and enter in the conversation that's going on in their mind. So if I hear a testimonial and it speaks to a problem that I have and that I'm seeking to solve by this service, I'm instantly interested. If I click to watch a video and I can see it's 12 minutes long, and there's no way I'm going to watch that. So that's the number one mistake I see, just not making it relevant and in the way that you would with any other piece of marketing, because they're not really any different from a video sales letter or a webinar. They really need to tick all of those same boxes of, appealing to a single target market, having that psychographic information right around, what's our prospects' fears and their pains and their desires. Needs to do all those jobs, but arguably it does those jobs even better than the other tools we use, like a sales letter or a video sales letter, because it's coming out of the customer's mouth. So it's far more believable than you just saying, hey, take my word for it.
Yeah, and I do love when you can see a video of somebody. I think there's a lot to be said for, we all know, if anyone's listened to me talking on this podcast about the importance of a good quality headshot for your profile picture, if your brand is you, we talk a lot about eyes and teeth. And when you can see somebody sharing their experience, but you can see their facial expressions, it's coming from them. They're not being strangled. They're not being tortured to do it. It's genuine. And, there's not a lot of hiding behind that. Whereas you see a lot of testimonials that are like written testimonials. And, I remember back in those sales and marketing days, we used to write the testimonials for people. Would just say, yes, I'll give you a testimonial. You just write it for me. And so we would write our own testimonial. It's kind of like the bio that, someone shares when a keynote speaker comes up and speaks. And it's like, well, the keynote speaker wrote that about themselves. It's sort of this. So, the best speaker in the whole world on this particular topic, and everyone knows.
Oh, very nice of you to say, Sam. Yeah. But you wrote it.
Yeah. I do remember hearing a speaker get up, and his way of breaking the ice with everyone was saying, well, there were some very lovely words. Thank you for sharing those things I wrote about myself. And then he kept going, and of course got a good laugh about that. But I think, when it's a recorded testimonial or video, it just holds so much more weight.
Yes.
Especially when it's their words. And I love what you said about we actually talked a little bit about the preparation side of things. So, and you might touch on this, but save me taking words out of your mouth, because I know all of our listeners right now are going, okay, enough. How do I get testimonials? Can you give us some tips? So, John, how can people get better testimonials? Can you share with us some of that amazing wisdom in that head of yours?
Yeah, sure. Sam, would you like me to talk about how to reach out for them and request them, or
Absolutely.
actually the process of
I think
recording?
The reaching out is the part that people struggle with the most.
Yeah.
It's probably the biggest barrier. I do have a follow-on question from this, so, we won't stop there. But
no, I agree.
Let's go in there.
It seems to be the biggest hurdle for people. Most people accept that they need them, and you don't really need to do too much. I could give you a list of stats that'll blow your mind. Number one B2B content marketing method by LinkedIn. So there's a whole length of stats as long as your arm. But most people don't need that. They accept that they're needed and they're effective. The hurdle comes that they're just a hassle, and how do you reach out without, imposing on your client? So the framework that I use and or the checklist that I use when I'm reaching out is what I call the R.E.A.L testimonial request framework, and it's just R.E.A.L. And the first letter there that I make sure I've got in every single request is I put the client relationship first.
Yep.
So I'm not putting everything on the line for one testimonial. So, for instance, I might say something like, I'm sure you're super busy right now, but no big deal either way. But if you're open to the idea, I'd really appreciate it. If my timing isn't good, simply reply with next time in the subject line, and please, no further explanation is necessary. So that's the very first thing that I add into any testimonial request. And it just takes the heat out of the exchange, so they can just easily reply. They don't have to give you a lame excuse that then's going to cheapen the relationship, next time you see them. Yeah. And the interesting thing it does is it frees people up to send more testimonial requests because they don't feel like they're imposing on their client. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the biggest benefit of having it in the first place, is just that psychological benefit of going, okay, I can send these out because it's not going to impose on my client. If they don't want to, they can just reply with next time.
Yeah, I love that. That does definitely takes a bit of that heat out, that's for sure. And I love the honesty of that too.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage as well our listeners that when you're writing messages and emails like that framework's amazing, John, and I really love that. But just remember, part of the reason that I think we feel uncomfortable when it comes to sending out requests to people or emails or messages or whatever it is, asking for something, is because we're not using words that we would use, and we're not speaking the way that we would speak.
Yes.
So don't feel like you have to use a particular framework or formula that isn't congruent with your personality, because at the end of the day, it's you that they're connecting with and getting to know. So word it in a way. Just think, if I was having this conversation face to face with somebody, how would I ask if I were using that same framework that John just gave me? How would I word that? How would I say that? What would I feel comfortable with doing? And sometimes it's about being real, which is pretty much what you've just said. It's about being real to you. And people can sniff it. They can smell it out when you're trying to be somebody else.
Yes. Absolutely, yes. And you see that so often with marketing copy, don't you? That they're going, oh, well, that's not the way Sam would talk.
I don't feel like that's her. Yeah.
Who's she copying? Yeah, absolutely. So it's more the principle behind it rather than, verbatim word for word. But what I do find is, I think the key element to that, the relationship first, is just allowing them to reply with something in the subject line and not say anything more, is a real takeaway from that first.
Yeah. And John, one of the things that you and I have spoken about a lot is the method of actually gathering the testimonial, and the fact that, for a lot of us, and you've already mentioned this, in the past, we've left it up to the person to then deliver the testimonial. And I can't tell you how many times I've asked for a testimonial from someone who I know has got a great story, and I get it and I go, oh,
yeah,
that's a bit flat. That's not what I was looking for.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it?
It really
it's almost
is, because
worse
you feel like
than not receiving it at all, because at least you thought
you
had it in
now.
the can.
Because now you can't go back and say, that sucked.
Yes.
Can you give me a better one? Can you talk about me better?
You don't. That's the thing. You only really get one shot at it, and which is really the second part of the framework, of the R.E.A.L framework, is easy and fast, and which ties into making it a testimonial interview. So what the testimonial interview does is it gives you quality control, but plus it makes it easy for your customer to actually give you the information, because they're not having to go away and second guess everything they write and, memorize things and all of that kind of stuff. They're just answering questions in the interview. So that's the E, which is easy and fast. So we'd often say something in the request just along the lines of, hey, if you'd be able to share your story about how you use social media to get more customers, or ideally a specific result, double your sales would be a nice one if it was true. I'd love to be able to share your story. Would you be open to a 30-minute case study interview via Zoom with Casey, for instance? So that's just a really simple way of telling them exactly what you want to talk about, exactly how long it's going to take. So there's a lot of It's very specific. And so I know what I'm signing up for there. It's not going to be something that's going to kill my afternoon. I'm half an hour on Zoom, done and dusted. No preparation is necessary.
Yeah, so good. Now, from that point, what are the next steps?
Yeah, the other thing that I would include in that request, and there's just two more beats that I would include. One is to give a reason why you're doing it. So A in R.E.A.L is a reason why. And this is something that goes all the way back to, there was a Harvard University study that found that by adding the word because to a request increased the compliance rate. It's a very one of those strange things that just occurs. So the test was they got students to cut into the line in front of a Xerox machine, and they said, excuse me, I have 20 pages, may I use the Xerox machine? Now what they found is if they got the people to say, excuse me, I have 20 pages, may I use the Xerox machine because I have to make copies, or because what they found was what went after because didn't really matter. It didn't really move the needle that much in terms of the compliance.
Yeah.
But not using because and not giving a reason why was a low compliance. So even if you just say something like, because I'm putting a testimonial page together on my website or something like that, that will statistically will increase your compliance. And it kind of makes sense because if most of your clients, as you were saying earlier, if you've given them a result or got a result for them, most of them just through the law of reciprocity will want to help you. They want to see you succeed. So if you tell them why you're using it, it makes sense that they go, oh, yeah, I'll help Sam do that. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. All right. And I can't ignore the fact that there's an L
One
in
that
there.
are left.
Yeah.
Yes, the last one, L is just
we'll leave everyone hanging. That's what the L's for. Leave them hanging.
Yeah, leave them hanging. No, larger contribution. So they know that it's for your promotional purposes, but it doesn't hurt just to frame it as their story is going to help other people, for instance, in the community as well. So just adding that in is just another little nice touch that I'd add into that testimonial request.
Yep. So good. Now, there is obviously some ways, I should say, grammatically correct, Sam, goodness. There are some ways that you can help people with this whole process and, of course, the getting of the testimonial itself. We'll talk about that in a moment. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about, once people get the testimonials, what are some of the ways in which they can use them? And I'm thinking about our listeners specifically here, because I'm sure some of them are going, okay, great. Well, I work for, I've got a direct selling business. I sell, products, or, I recruit people into the business opportunity. Isn't that something that the company should be doing on my behalf? Now, I'm just going to say that's not a real question, because we all know that the answer to that is no. You are responsible for growing your own personal business, and you are what you're selling. But my question, though, John, is around how they can use that testimonial once they get it. What are some clever ways or, strategic ways that testimonial can be utilized?
Yeah, so many ways. And I find that they are really underutilized, that people literally just get the video testimonial and, put it on for instance, a landing page and forget about it. But the beauty of capturing video is it can be repurposed into so many formats. So, for instance, I was talking to a marketing agency recently, and they sent me a case study deck, which was all of these case studies in one PDF, as an example. We create, like, for instance, an article which goes on, it's like a magazine article with a very nice headshot, and then the kind of before working with such and such, after working with such and such, the headlines up the top, and then a nice description of the transformation that took place. I guess the rule of thumb is anywhere around where you're closing the sale, particularly online, using proof is going to be very advantageous to you. So, for instance, even if you're doing in-person sales calls, if you've got someone booking a call, through Calendly or another method, the thank you page is where you can start showing social proof. And then if there's a time gap before the call takes place, there can be emails that go out that are also showing social proof. And they don't always have to be the video. They can be a little story about, hey, Sam, I thought of you because I was working with a company like yours last month, and then having the result and just talking about the result that you got. So it's just repurposing that information in a different way. And obviously presentation. So if there's any type of presentation that they're doing, again, don't have to use them as video. We can talk about them as a customer story and just use the facts from the story and present it in any medium that we like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that there's so many different ways, that it can be repurposed. Just because getting it in video form is kind of like getting it in the perfect form, because it can then be turned into so much more, but you can't turn a text testimonial into a video. So it's that beauty of, hey, now I can turn it, I can grab a couple of little, grabs from that and put their photo with it. I could put it on social media. I actually love when someone doesn't, they've got the appointment with me, they've got the meeting. So let's use our listeners for an example here. You get someone to RSVP for a party, demonstration, or an event, like they're coming.
Yep.
But if at that point you then put in that extra work to show me that I've made a good decision, and it's not to sell, but it's to say, hey, here's somebody else who attended one of these events. You're doing, this is going to be really great.
Yeah, you're safe. You're doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's reassuring, but it also makes me feel like, okay, they haven't just got me and they're moving on to the next person. They're still investing time in me.
Yes.
And, sending personal messages. And I love what you said, though, about giving the reason why. And I'm really passionate about that with social media. Don't just share something with somebody and just expect them to figure out why you shared it, or put it on your feed from somewhere else and expect everyone to get the relevance. Tell the story about why this is important for them. And so if you're providing a testimonial to someone, I think that's really powerful, John, that you're actually mentioning, like you said, I've worked with someone similar to you, and, first thing that they're going, oh, they've paid attention to who I am and what my needs are. But you said something really powerful there, and that was addressing the need and making sure that you are actually showing them that you get what their need is, and here's somebody else who had a similar need or the same need, and I help them with that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
I don't care what your business is. I don't care how big or little. I don't care how long you've been in it for. I don't think that there's anyone that's not really relevant for to be doing that.
Yeah. I agree, because ultimately it just comes down to trust. People just want to trust that you're going to be able to do what you say you do.
Yeah.
And if you can show someone that was in my shoes a little while ago and now they've got the result that I want to achieve, then it really just eliminates the need for a lot of that other stuff, and like I say, it's we survived for 3 years without even hiring a copywriter. It was great when we hired a copywriter because we got a bump in sales and all the rest of it, but I was doing really bad copy and just using testimonials to do that heavy lifting for us, and we sold over $1 million of an online course just through doing that without even hiring a copywriter.
Yeah, wow. And see, that's the thing. I think we put so much more work in, we spend so much more time doing all of these complicated things, on that, you actually bring back a little memory, because as all of our listeners would know, we have an online membership, which many of our listeners are a part of, and that membership is to do weekly training to support people in growing their direct selling business on social media, and so. We often, when we do a challenge or a training or we speak at an event, people will jump in and join that membership. The really interesting thing is, initially, I would talk about the membership and I would share the results that people had been getting. I would share, what was in there and why you should buy it and the value that was involved. But I didn't use a video testimonial. And I remember one day, I asked for one from somebody who had, a really amazing experience. She quadrupled her business in 3 months by doing the training that we were providing. And she had a very similar story to many people, but the difference was that she was super comfortable in front of a camera and very happy to share it. So I got her to share that testimonial. She did a video. She sent it to me. So I didn't interview her like you've suggested. And I was very lucky that hers came in as a good quality testimonial, because I hadn't controlled it. And I thought I'll just see what happens. And I threw this in there and started sharing just that little, 1 minute video. And the conversion rate of people actually making the decision to join us went up by nearly 20%.
Wow.
Simply because they could see somebody else who they could see was genuine because it was obviously recorded on her phone, and and she shared a bit about her business. They're like, yep, that's like me. She shared the results, and that was the key.
Yes.
And then on top of that, she shared a couple of little quick tips. I think one of them was, by the way, if you haven't listened to the podcast, check this episode out. It's one of my favorites, and it totally changed my world. And it was just that genuine personality that came in, and suddenly people went, oh, I'm like that. I get that. Okay, great. And it just changed the game.
Threw in the podcast for good measure.
Yeah, through podcasting for good measure. I just think, sometimes, and we all do it, like we all need to have that third-party validation. And, sometimes we really take the hard road, don't we? We spend all this time and effort and often money on marketing and promoting and selling ourselves, when really the simplest thing to do is get a couple of case studies,
and show it. Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about what you just described there about that testimonial is it has one of the golden rules of a great testimonial, which is a quantifiable result. Yeah. So when you said there that she quadrupled her sales, we're always looking. Specificity, hard to say, in marketing and in copy in particular is very sought after. That's why you see these, made $1,149 in XYZ days kind of thing in copy. So if you can get a quantifiable result in the after picture of a testimonial, because ideally what a testimonial is a little story. It's a little human interest story that says, hey, I had this problem or challenge, I worked with Sam and I got this quantifiable result. And then you put on the endorsement as the last beat that we need there. But what you had there is a wonderful quantifiable result. And if I want that result, that's appealing.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, if people are sitting here right now going, okay, well, how do I learn more from John? Because obviously this is what you do now. You teach people to get better testimonials. Now, I, for one, am lined up. I'm in your course. I'm so super excited. I think this is really powerful. I'd love for you to share with our listeners how they can do some learning with you as well. Because for me, I think this is probably one of the most powerful marketing tools any of you can have in place in your business. So if you want to strategize growing a really powerful business, find some ways to get some quality testimonials and use them. But John, how can you help them with that?
Thank you, Sam. I really appreciate that. Yes, I've got an online course. It's a 5-week program, and basically we start with, and it's really more than just the act of getting testimonials. It's really having a rethink about the way we're marketing, full stop. And I'm a big advocate of customer-led marketing. So just doing less of the, tell, and doing more of the show. And so that starts obviously with getting the testimonial. So we work together for 5 weeks. And the first step is really just crafting those testimonial requests, which I personally help people do. They go through the course material. We meet up every week for a coaching call. And then I help them tailor those testimonial requests, and we start to think about, what are some of the big results that you've achieved for that client? How can we get that into the request and so on? And then from there, it's about capturing the high quality recording using low cost equipment. And there's some wonderful technology now that allows us just to remotely record like we're doing right now and safely capture a high quality recording, much higher than Zoom. And then the way that we capture these testimonials, because we only need 3 or 4 sound bites, they're very, very easy to edit because they only end up, 40 to 60 seconds long. So there's some great tools now that edit video like you would edit a Word document or a Google document. You literally just delete the bit of text, it deletes the video. So we've got some tools there that we use to edit the videos. And like I say, we only make, 3 to 5 edits in the videos. So they're very lightly edited and you can turn them around very quickly. But what you end up with is a really powerful little story of a before picture, had this challenge, work with you, got this result. I would highly recommend Sam because XYZ kind of thing. So they're a nice little powerful package. And that's what we do is that's basically that 5 weeks of the program. And at the end of that, within first week, people have testimonials coming in if they've done their homework and sent the requests. And then from there, it's just a matter of organising the interviews and processing them. And the interviews are typically like a half an hour dealio, and most of that's kind of chat. The actual, the question component is 15 to 20 minutes. So it's quite fast to do.
Yeah, brilliant. So we'll put some details in the show notes for people that want to check that out. Whereabouts can they find you, John?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place to find me. If you look for John Hubbard on LinkedIn, you'll see testimonials plastered all over my profile. If you're interested in learning how to reach out, using that framework that I outlined before, I've got a template which you can customize for yourself, and that's at testimonialscript.com. So testimonialscript.com, and I've got an ebook there with that framework that I outlined, and then the finished script there, which you can modify or copy and paste to your heart's desire.
I love it. So we'll put all of those links and bits and pieces in the show notes, so you guys can access that at any time. I do have 4 fun questions for you, though, John, just before we wrap up. These are the most important questions of the entire podcast interview. So let's start off with, what is your favorite book to add to our Accelerator book list?
Yeah, my favorite book, I think it's marketing related, is Predictably Irrational by a guy called Dan Ariely. Have you heard of that one, Sam?
No, I'm going to write that one down.
So he goes through, and I love marketing because I love the psychology behind it. Those things that you were talking about before with social media, that lights me up I love that stuff because I love the practical psychology side of marketing, and Predictably Irrational is really a book about all the ways that we operate, and we think we're so clever, but we end up just doing the same things over and over again because we're operating on an operating system that's thousands and tens of thousands of years old. So it's one of my favorite books. A lot to learn about marketing in there, even though it's not designed for marketing.
Yeah, I love that. People are going to stop giving me new books, because what happens is after every podcast episode, I buy the book, I put it on our bookshelf. I usually get one as well for prizes. A lot of our members know that I love my love language is gifts, so I love to give gifts. And so whenever someone mentions a book I haven't heard of, I can almost hear the groan from Greg from afar, because he knows that we're about to put in another order. So there's another one for my list. That's great. Thank you. Chance to go shopping. So if you could have a superpower, any superpower, what would that be and why?
It'd be the ability to fly. Which terrifies, because
since COVID, that's the most common answer.
Yes, I think so. Eileen, my partner, walks past me sometimes, and I've got a YouTube video on the iPad of some guy in a wingsuit going out over a mountain. She says, "You're not going to do wingsuiting." No, I don't care what you say. So yes, I would love to be able to fly. Whether I'll get there, I'm not sure, but definitely won't get there by flapping my wings.
No, well, you could try, but I don't think that will work so well for you.
Yeah.
Your favorite quote, John?
I don't know who this from, and I probably should have Googled it, but it's people don't buy from you because they understand your product. They buy from you because they feel understood. Ooh. And I think that's been when I heard that, it sunk home, and it's been a bit of something that I just say to myself as a bit of a mantra when I'm in danger of going down the route of making it all about me and not the customer.
Yep. I love that one. That's a really, really powerful one, and I think summarizes a lot of what we've been talking about in here. So last question, and probably my most favorite, is if you could go back in time and say one thing to your past self, what would that be?
I think it would be to sell first before you build it. I've gone down the rabbit hole a lot of times, and it's taken me a long time to get smarter. It's been incremental improvements, but I like the doing activity, and I like the building of new things and all of that kind of stuff. So I can easily get into the technicalities of that. But I've been tripped up numerous times because I've built something the market doesn't want or care about, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I've got smarter about that and put the idea out there into the world first, sell it, even if it's at a lower cost, and then build it once I've established that there's demand there. So that's been a slow learning curve, but if I could have told myself one thing, it'd be sell it first, build it second.
Yeah. It actually reminds me of one of my favorite books, Oversubscribed by Daniel Priestley. Have you read that one?
No, I haven't. I'm aware of it though. Yeah.
It's a good one. Look, I recommend, there are some books I think are better read versus audible. This was one that I
Yes.
really enjoyed listening to.
Yep.
But one of the concepts in there he talks about is creating demand before you build the product, because then you know what the demand is for the product.
Yeah.
So putting he tells a story about a really simple process that he created for a personal trainer who was sick of just doing these little personal training sessions because, they only had so much time in their day.
Yep.
And so he coached this particular person to get some top-end, high-end clients, like charge 10 times what he was charging for his little personal training clients. But what he got them to do was actually put it out there and say, if I did this, essentially, you create some demand around it. But if I did this, who would be interested? I'm just feeling it out. I'm not going to do it if I don't get the interest. And, and he did this as well with some conferences. He was having trouble, or he had some clients having trouble selling their conferences or events out. And so rather than just putting the tickets out there, did that same process and sold the events out before they'd released the tickets.
Yes.
And it's just such a clever process. But John, it just, we were talking before about that. I've been in that same boat as you, where, initially I built an entire course. I spent, we calculated at the time it was about $20,000 in costs to build this course for a particular industry that I wasn't interested in, but I thought needed, I thought I could see a need there, but I hadn't gauged the need first.
Yes.
And it was heartbreaking at the time because, like you, I think I sold 3. And what was even worse, this was probably 8 years ago now. It was actually a real estate course, so it's kind of funny we're talking about this. It was a real estate course, but years later, I actually got approached by the Real Estate Institute that wanted to purchase some courses from me and have me come and speak at their events. And I thought, you've got to be kidding. I was like 5 years ahead of my time.
Yeah.
And I'd only just deleted the course. I finally just bit the bullet and deleted the whole thing. And it was so out of date anyway. I was like, I'm just going to kiss it goodbye and be done with it. But I thought I had it in the bag. I thought I knew what I was doing. But anyway.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking. And I think as optimists, we have that, or as entrepreneurs, we have that optimism bias that is waiting there to trip us up if we're not careful.
Yeah. But look, no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are, whatever business that you're in, I think for me, the underlying tone here is know who your audience is, know who they are, know what their needs are, and know what the demand is. How do you serve them? How do you support them? And then when you do that and you do it well, get that story shared so that others can see how you can impact them, because you've all got an amazing impact to make in your businesses. The challenge you've got, of course, is how do you communicate that with people that don't know you yet? And that's where building the trust and the referral testimonial process is just so powerful. Thank you so much today, John. It's been such an honor and a pleasure chatting with you, and I'm really, really glad that we were able to get together and do this. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate you.
My pleasure, Sam, and I hope your audience has got some value and can apply some of the things we've talked about. But it's been an honor to be on the show. Thank you.
Yeah, I have absolutely no doubt. Make sure that you do look John up. Now, just really very quickly, actually, I nearly forgot to mention, John, you're actually going to be coming into our Accelerator membership group, and you're going to be doing a deeper dive on how to get those testimonials with our members. So, look, I'm super excited for that. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for those that we are working with to grow their business to actually put a strategy into place. So, for anyone who's wanting to know a little bit more about that, of course, we'll put the links in the show notes too, so you don't miss out. But if, of course, you're listening to this after John's been live in Accelerator, we will have the recording in there as well of that, because it is going to be a really, really powerful session. So I'm very excited for that one too.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And I think we'll have plenty of opportunity to do some hot seats and to really put some rubber to the road.
Yeah, I can't wait. So look, again, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you in here. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you again for a deeper dive training in our Accelerator membership group. And of course, anyone that wants to learn a little bit more about how they can get some better testimonials with John Hubbard, then we'll put the link in the show notes as well for everyone there too. But
Perfect.
Thank you, and thanks to our beautiful listeners for tuning in again next week. We look forward to seeing you on the podcast again in 7 days' time. Have an amazing week, and we'll see you then. Bye for now. Thank you for watching this video. If you found this helpful and you want to learn more, you can watch the full episode by clicking on your screen or in the link in the description below. Don't forget as well to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming podcast episodes. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye for now.